What an incredibly dark week we've had. The overwhelming emotions I've been feeling and the subsequent optics coming from the left at the moment have led me to want to create a video like this. And I'm just going to talk about it at length. You can decide on your own conclusions of this, but the things that I found have been quite definitive. Now, there's all sorts of conspiracies revolving around who did it, even though we know who did it, what they represent, what they stand for. If there's some sort of global puppet master involved that we're not aware of. There's lots of theories being presented. There's lots of conspiracies being entertained, but none of it's really solid or concrete. A lot of it's just rumors or hypothesis, circumstantial connections and evidence and stuff like that. But I'm going to keep things factual here, things that are completely and utterly undeniable, because I like to operate from facts. Whether you think the left is responsible for doing this is irrelevant. The most undeniable aspect of the left's involvement with this entire situation is their reaction to it. That's not fabricated. That's not a theory. That's not a conspiracy. That is barefaced and out there for all to see. It's not a speculation. They're very much happy, gloating actually at the death of a father, a husband, of a great man who wanted to debate and engage in conversation with those with opposing views, to find a common ground, to find and understand talking points from either side, for the right to better understand their opposition and the left to better understand theirs. And as we're about to go into here, we're going to understand exactly why and how this possibly could have ended the way that it did. But I don't really like to think about it as an end. What I don't think the left truly understands here is what they have just started by doing this. Whether you want to think the left were responsible for this event even happening in the first place is irrelevant. Their response is complicit enough. You know what they say, silence is violence. So what do you call laughing about it on the internet? There are implications to the way that they've reacted. So today, I'm going to be talking about something that I stumbled upon in the wake of the horrendous event of Charlie Kirk's assassination and the even more despicable behavior of leftists online in light of the event, which I'm going to sensationally refer to as the invasion of the dark triad into the Gothic subculture, but is officially referred to by this title here. Understanding left-wing authoritarianism, relations to the dark personality traits, altruism, and social justice commitment. Now I'm going to read the summary for you here, but it does go on to draw similarities between RWA and LWA, sharing very similar traits. RWA being right-wing authoritarianism, and LWA being left-wing authoritarianism. However, LWA seems to share very specific traits with something referred to as the dark triad, which is right here. And the more you read the symptoms, the aspects of psychology present in this dark triad, the more you're able to understand the left's reaction to a man losing his life while simply trying to talk to the opposition. Now, you're probably thinking that maybe this was written and collated and released in light of Charlie Kirk's assassination. No, it wasn't. This is not new information. This was easily readable, predictable behavior, which has resulted in this paper being proven right once again in one of the most extreme ways possible. So allow me to read the abstract here. You're welcome to read the entire report, the entire psychology report. You're welcome to go read it yourself. But in the interest of sensationalism and brevity, I'm just going to keep this short and offer my opinions on it. And I want you to see if you share some similar opinions. In two pre-registered studies, we investigated the relationship of left-wing authoritarianism with the ego-focused trait of narcissism. Based on existing research, we expected individuals with higher levels of left-wing authoritarianism to also report higher levels of narcissism. Further, as individuals with leftist political attitudes can be assumed to be striving for social equality, we expected left-wing authoritarianism to also be positively related to pro-social traits, but narcissism to remain a significant predictor of left-wing authoritarianism above and beyond those pro-social dispositions. We investigated our hypotheses in two studies using cross-selection correlation designs. Now, it does go into how they actually managed to conduct these studies, and it was through questionnaires that were submitted by the subjects themselves with subvariants to control for certain aspects of choosing what they thought people wanted to hear, what they think is good, what is socially acceptable. But I'm just going to get into the main meat and potatoes of what this abstract is trying to say, and what this study ultimately found. The results of multiple regression analysis showed that a strong ideological view, according to which a violent revolution against existing societal structures is legitimate, was associated with antagonistic narcissism, and psychopathy. However, neither dispositional altruism nor social justice commitment was related to left-wing anti-hierarchical aggression. Considering these results, we assume that some leftist political activists do not actually strive for social justice and equality, but rather use political activism to endorse or exercise violence against others to satisfy their own ego-focused needs. We discussed these results in relation to the dark ego vehicle principle. Now, this is a psychological paper written for other psychologists to study. It's not so much written out in layman's terms, so I'm going to try my best from my understanding to explain these things to you. Essentially, people on the left are less interested in the actual causes they proclaim to be fighting for and are more interested in the types of control, violence, aggression, and egotistical self-fulfillment they get from enforcing these types of ideals and the actions they use to enforce them. Now, it does go into it far deeper in the entire study, and I do recommend you give it a read, but I'm going to read through some of my favorite parts. LWA, or left-wing authoritarianism, LWA anti-conventionalism, is assumed to not only lead to an intolerance towards conservative values, but also to the desire to impose those progressive moral values on others. This desire goes along with top-down censorship as well as anti-hierarchical aggression. Now, top-down censorship is the desire for a government authority to censor those below it in order to maintain the political progressive message, free from any adversary. They desire a government that represents them to censor things that do not. The top-down censorship dimension of LWA is described as the preference for the use of authority, governmental and institutional, like colleges, for example, and universities, to deal with opposition and the strive to suppress any speech that is considered as offensive and intolerant. For example, individuals with high levels of top-down censorship may strive to suppress free speech to regulate the expression of right-wing beliefs in educational institutions. Similarly, individuals high in RWA, which is right-wing authoritarianism, support the limitation of free speech, however, as a means to endorse right-wing values. Now, this should come as a surprise to nobody. By merely being media literate, by being terminally online thanks to the convenience of smartphones and internet plans that allow us to be connected at all times, and Wi-Fi leaking from every orifice of every metropolitan city on Earth, you can see that their collective behavior expresses these exact points that were present in studies before this year, before things got to this point. This is nothing new. This is predicted in these studies. In fact, predicted in studies even before this. There are studies before this that are referenced for this study. It's all cited in there if you want to go read it yourself. They were able to legitimize and solidify their theories based on pre-existing studies of left-wing authoritarianism. Contemporary empirical studies on the ego-focused correlates of LWA are comparatively rare. The existing research, however, points to a relationship between LWA and ego-focused traits such as narcissism, as well as psychopathy. In the present research, we thus wanted to shed further light on the relations of LWA with narcissism. Going beyond the research of Ziegler-Hill, we investigated the relationship between narcissism and the three subfacets of LWA. That's respectively anti-conventionalism, top-down censorship, and hierarchical aggression. However, as left-wing political attitudes also include pro-social concerns, i.e. the striving for social equality, in the present research, we simultaneously controlled for the relationship of LWA and pro-social focused dispositions. This approach allowed us to investigate if narcissism is related to LWA above and beyond the predictive power of those pro-social traits. So even regardless of pro-social traits like DEI, they were still able to draw a conclusion, a correlation, a strong correlation between narcissism, the dark triad, and left-wing authoritarianism. Now, I could go on and I could read off the entirety of this study. Some of you wouldn't even understand what I'm saying. There are some aspects of this that I don't even understand because, quite frankly, I am not familiar with the processes of psychological studies. The conclusions, however, are clear as day, especially when we have real-life references to draw from. And honestly, it wouldn't take me a lot of time to truly understand every single aspect of that by Googling some of the terminologies and processes that are present in this study, in this writer. I just quite frankly don't have a lot of time. But abstracts, conclusions, and summarizations are there for a reason, in order to give you an abbreviated conclusion of what the results found. Now, whenever you look back to everything that I've said about leftist goths trying to control the subculture through now imposing the phrase, "it is political," you have to agree with the politics, you start to understand the dark triad having infiltrated more aggressive ranks of LWA, left-wing authoritarianism, or liberals or leftists, or whatever synonym you want to use to describe these freaks, you can then start to understand the behavior of modern goths. They are trying to exert control over the subculture. This is no longer about liking spooky stuff or being into the music anymore, or admiring the depth of the aesthetics, which has been written off as being superficial at this point in the light of their glorious political aspect that's now been imposed. And then you see how they react to me talking about the fact that you shouldn't be telling people what to believe in order to be part of a subculture. Their reaction hasn't been one of intelligent retorts, eloquent responses. No, it's been quite inflammatory, hasn't it? It's been relatively aggressive, which again is present in things like the Dark Triad, and also these studies that link narcissism, aggressive narcissism, to LWA. Stuff like this right here. You might recognize some of these names, actually. Look at this. They want to fraudulently remove my ability to support my family, to pay my bills, and continue my livelihood because they disagree. I have a family in this house that I provide for. They don't care about this. They want to fraudulently attack my channel, to remove my ability to earn money, to destroy my livelihood, because they're unwilling to allow a space for me and my followers and my support within this subculture. No, it needs to be destroyed. This is, again, another obvious, clear symptom of the Dark Triad, which affects LWA, which has obviously infected Goth. It is one and the same. And I'm still trying to understand, what is Goth about politics? What is Goth about it? You can point to every single thing in the Goth subculture. Every single thing, everything can be referred to as Goth or Gothic, right? Gothic in the sense of it's an adjective, a descriptor, and the enjoyers of this thing that is described as Gothic are called Goths. The music was originally described as Gothic. The aesthetic, described as Gothic. The novels, Gothic novels. The entirety of the aesthetic and the sound and the interests of Goth can all be described as Gothic. Every single thing can. The only thing that cannot be described as Gothic are politics. What are Goth politics? I know people keep trying to say, well, it came from punk. You don't understand what that means. I've read 2-3 books on what that means. It doesn't mean what you think it means. It was the sound of punk that inspired those to pursue things like post-punk and Gothic rock. It was the sound of it, the rawness of it. It was the ability to just pick up some instruments and start making your own noise. That's what inspired Goths to originally start doing what they were doing in the late 70s and the early 80s. It wasn't a political inspiration or motivation. It was a desire to do something different, to stand out, to create art in a artless world, something more refined, something more eloquent. It was completely and utterly void of politics. If political people took part in it, then that was separate to their involvement in being Goth, or more importantly, the formation and the qualifiers of being one. And I need to make this clear, have always stood by the fact that you do not need to force people to agree to something in order to partake in this subculture. The parameters are very clear. If you like certain things, then you qualify as Goth. Not that you qualify to others, you qualify yourself. It's quite clear. It's quite obvious, actually. You like certain things, you discover what Goth is all about, and you're like, oh, I guess I am one of those then. But I will never, ever stop fighting against this authoritarian regime that has infiltrated the Gothic subculture over the last 5 years, that insists that you have to agree with the political left of America to partake in something that started in the late 70s in England. It does not make sense. I have spoken to many Goths over the last year or so that have agreed with where I'm coming from, that are afraid to say it publicly because of what it means to challenge these people. Again, refer to the Dark Triad and the study that we have. You challenge them, you state what you believe in, then face persecution. Look, I'm not going to tell you who is and who isn't Goth, but when it comes to stuff like this, expelling people from the Goth subculture, denying them entry, trying to destroy their livelihoods because I don't believe that Goth should be a political vehicle of hatred, of discrimination, of exclusivity. Unbelievable, right? In 2025, saying that Goth is for everyone and just shouldn't exclude people based on their political beliefs has gotten me in hot water with people who don't agree. So before I ramble on for too long, it's already been 30 minutes I've been doing this video for, I want you to understand that there is a provable psychology to what we have been seeing from the left and how they have been behaving and how this behavior has been predicted for quite some time. This is what you're up against. They're human, okay? Let's not dehumanize the opposition. Let's not get angry or violent in light of the things that they have done, that they have said, that they have expressed. I am absolutely adamant to remain eloquent, to remain civil, to remain democratic, ironically. There was an aspect of me that was just thinking, do you know what, this, after this violence that we've all seen, and the arrogance and the inhumanity that we've seen following the event, scorched earth, gloves are off, let's go. Let's really fight this. But that's not what Charlie would have wanted. We know that's not what Charlie would have wanted. So what we're going to do is we are going to keep our composure. We're going to remain composed. We are going to truly fight the opposition in the way Charlie was. And that is with our words, with an aspect of understanding, and with a peaceful conclusion in mind. And with that, I say thank you for watching. And please stay safe out there. Disagreement is not violence, and violence is not the answer. Please be civil here. We are on the edge of something truly remarkable, terrible, but remarkable. And I don't want to see anybody in this subculture getting hurt, whether I agree with you politically or not. I don't want to see anybody getting hurt. I don't. Even my biggest haters out there. I don't want to see any of these people being attacked violently. I don't want to see them removed in such a way. I never would, never could. So I'll catch you next time, everybody.